Hello, and welcome to this month's edition of United Way at Work. I'm your host, Nancy Gordon, Executive Director of United Way of Rutland County, and my guest is a man I've danced with in public. I'm delighted to welcome Clay Gilbert, who is the Director of Evergreen Substance Abuse Services, which is a division of Rutland Mental Health Services. And yeah, we've danced at holiday parties years ago.
Yes, known each other for some time.
Rocking out together.
Absolutely.
So welcome to this table.
Thank you.
Because I know you well, and we have worked together when I was with Community Care Network a few years back, I know that Evergreen offers some pretty essential services to the community. And I know personally some folks who are real success stories having come through Evergreen. But first, before we get to what you do and how you're part of the solution, I'd like your take on the problem of substance abuse in our region. We've gotten a lot of bad publicity the last few years, but what's your take on it? Is the problem exceptional around here, or is it just that the attention that's been focused on it is more intense?
I think a combination. Certainly, first off, and I got to applaud the governor for going nationally and actually admitting the problem of opiate addiction in the state of Vermont. And I don't know exactly why so much attention got paid to Rutland. I don't think it's really been any worse here than it has been in other parts of the state. But actually, I see that attention and that publicity has really brought about a lot of good. It really got people out of denial that there was a problem. It brought it to the surface to where now then it was openly talked about and solutions could be begun put in place.
It's certainly not part of how Vermonters like to think of ourselves. You know, a lot of us who moved here from other places, like my family, came to expect a gentler, slower pace of living, more wholesome place to raise our children, etc. And it doesn't go with the beautiful countryside, hence that infamous Rolling Stone illustration of the lumberjack shooting up. And it's a stark contrast. We think, most of us, of substance abuse, we think of it as drunkards in alleys and junkies in tenements and that kind of thing. We don't think of it as our friends and neighbors in beautiful Vermont, small town Vermont. And yet, as you say, it does spread everywhere. I mean, just recently watching one of the presidential debates in New Hampshire, the local reporters are talking about the opiate addiction problem in the Granite State. It doesn't expire over any of our borders. So what does the experience of addiction look like? What commonalities are there? I mean, I know it crosses all socioeconomic backgrounds, professions, etc., but what are some of the common elements?
Well, one of the things I think I'd like to make a point of is that I think we're a drug-taking nation. Every other commercial on TV is something to make you happier, smarter, stronger, sexier, faster, thinner, whatever the case might be. And they list off these long thing of side effects and then talk to your doctor about blah, blah, blah. And obviously they're doing those advertisements because people do talk to their doctor. So, I think we're a country where the culture has really evolved into where we treat symptoms. Like, I've talked to people before about, they say, gee, I get a headache every day. And I go, well, what are you doing about it? It's, I take Tylenol every 2 hours or whatever. And it's, the reason you have a headache isn't because of a Tylenol deficiency. You have a headache because that's your body telling you there's something wrong.
And you might be dehydrated, or you might have
stress, or coming down with the flu, or whatever the case might be. But we treat symptoms, and we treat them ourselves quite often. If we don't feel happy, we feel stressed. Rather than really dealing with it head on, we either take a medication from our doctor or eventually start taking, something, having a drink or having, a joint of marijuana or something else, depending on what it is. And so I think taking drugs in our culture has become such a norm. We're very vulnerable to addiction.
And that does make sense, because the fine line between what's prescribed and what's used in an illicit manner, obviously has blurred. Now there's so much prescription drug abuse as well. So things that start off as maybe helpful in the short term, given a particular medical situation, we become dependent. And you know, the expression, I remember my younger sister pointed this out to me at one point. One of my goddaughters was using the expression, this is late 80s, and she said, take a chill pill. Because that was a phrase that was very popular.
Yes.
And my younger sister pointed out what a terrible message that is to little kids.
Right.
That if you're going to calm down, you take a pill.
Right. What was the song, Huey Lewis in the News, I Want a New Drug?
I Want a drug.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of our motto, in a sense, in our country for a while.
Yeah.
And that's kind of transformed. And now, the pain medication epidemic and the opiate epidemic, I mean, a lot of folks have started with, never a history of addiction before, but they had a legitimate operation or a back problem or whatever the case might be, and well-meaning doctors would prescribe opiates. And in talking doctors, I don't think they get as much education around addiction in med school as they could, though I think that's probably improving and getting better. So they're not really familiar with addiction, so they prescribe opiates for a while, and then, oh gee, you've taken them long enough, we need to discontinue them. Well, the person is addicted then, and so they don't want to get sick, because coming off opiates is very uncomfortable. It's like having a terrible case of the flu. And so then they start using, either prescription drugs illicitly or going to heroin, because heroin is cheaper than buying illicit prescription drugs on the street.
And so people who would certainly be unlikely suspects.
Yes.
Because again, we have this very limited idea, the junkie culture, what that means, who those people are, that they're on the fringes of society, and the rock and roll lifestyle, and jazz musicians from the 20s, all these kinds of images that we have of who abuses substances.
So I think that image is changing, more real, because I think everybody now knows somebody
who's had some
and it's usually
issue.
someone that surprises them that they're having a problem.
Professionals, people who've lived very wholesome lives, and things are happening now that...
And some people are just very susceptible, more susceptible to addiction than other people. And if I knew the answer to that, I could retire. But, some people can use an illicit drug or have prescriptions drugs and they stop and they're okay. And other people, it just hooks them for some reason. I look at addiction to drugs and alcohol. To me, it's all the same. Alcohol is a legal drug. Very similar, especially once people find out about it, to people with diabetics. Someone goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, gee, your blood sugar's high. You better change, your lifestyle. So they start jogging and eating lots of salad and all that, and they get it checked, and it's fine. And that's true for some people. Other people do all that, blood sugar's still high. So, we'll try an oral insulin. And for some people, that's effective, and it brings it down to where it should be, and it's manageable. Other people, it's not. Other people need to have, injectable insulin. And there's some people that, regardless of how hard they try, and it doesn't make them good or bad, they just can't stay away from the jelly donuts.
Yeah.
They just have a worse case of that than other people do. And I look at addiction to alcohol and drugs the same way.
Now that's a really good point. For a long time in our culture, the message was that it's a moral failing, a weakness of character to deal with an addiction of any kind.
And I think that's changing. I think people are becoming more realistic about it. Shaming people into wellness doesn't work good for any type of condition.
It's really an oxymoron.
Right.
Yeah.
And where there is a certain amount of responsibility, though, just as if you're diabetic. Once you find out that you have a certain condition, you do have a certain responsibility to do what you can to address it. And that's the same with people that are addicted to alcohol and drugs. Once they find out and once they know that they have a certain condition and there's certain things they need to do about it, they are responsible then for managing it, just like any physical issue.
Yeah, you can't say the devil made me do it.
Right.
Like Philip Wilson used to say. It's not.
Right.
It's not an excuse. It's context.
Right. Exactly.
that explains certain things, but it's not an excuse to perpetuate the behavior.
Exactly.
Oh, it's
Well
not me,
put.
it's my disease.
Yeah, after a while, that doesn't hold water anymore. I mean, some people may have the disease so badly that no matter what steps they do, they can't get ahead of it. And that's true with any disease, whether it's a heart condition, diabetes, or whatever the case might be. But as long as a person, in my opinion, is sincerely doing their best, that's really all we can really expect from someone. And
Now-
some are going to make it, and unfortunately, there's going to be a few that don't, and that's sad.
Now, short of ODing or having some fatal result of addiction, do you find people who quit successfully after multiple tries, like with smoking, what is it, 7 times before a lot of people succeed
Sure.
in staying quit?
Sure.
And do you find that you see some folks who kind of come in and out and you keep serving them, but then eventually they get it?
Well, yes, and unfortunately or unfortunately, I've been doing this work for 25 years, and I've got to see people multiple times in treatment, sometimes even their children, and probably soon their grandchildren, which is a little scary, but some people, I think the first time is one of the best shots. And I think that's true for most conditions. But that doesn't mean if the first shot doesn't work that it's a failure. And, people ask me at times, well, what's your success rate? Well, I don't even know how to answer that. How many people walk in the door for the first time and because of our magic never drink or drug again? Like maybe 1%, I don't know. Right. How many people come in the door, they're unemployed, they're homeless, their health is a mess, all their relationships are broken, and they come in and they get their feet on the ground and they start putting some things together and they get a job and a place to live and mend some of their relationships and get out of legal trouble and get reasonably stable and then backslide a lot. I don't think that's a failure, I think people reach different levels of success. And the one problem with addiction, probably more so than other ailments, because addicts are very colorful people. When someone is actively using, they're very annoying to the public. They're loud, they steal, they cheat, they lie, they throw up on each other, whatever the case might be.
They're conspicuous.
Yes. So when someone doesn't do well, it's very obvious, but when they do well, they disappear. They melt back into the community. Teachers, Cub Scout leaders, going to church, whatever the case may be, they just totally disappear. So we don't see the successes as much.
That's a good point.
And because of the self-help groups, AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and Narcotics Anonymous have been around for a long time. And there's certainly been a lot of successes there, but they have anonymity in their program. Right. So you don't see people like, I'm a surviving alcoholic on national TV. You just don't see that like with other disorders. So a lot of people get under the idea that addicts can never get better or treatment doesn't work. And that's really not the case at all. There's a lot of people that are successful in recovery. I'm in recovery myself. I've been in recovery since '86.
I will share a story. He's no longer in this area, but a former priest at our church was very forthcoming when he came to town and said, I am in recovery. And I want you to know that. I don't want you to hear someone speculate. I don't want it to be rumors. I'm in recovery, and I ask for your support. And he's been very active in recovery circles around the country. And yeah, what a great example, as you say. I mean, he hit the bottom and came back up, and not only came back up, but found a new vocation. And within that vocation, that ordained vocation, has this specialty of working with people battling addiction and trying to maintain sobriety. And like you say, how wonderful. In that case, it didn't have the publicity imposed upon him. He came forward.
Right.
And it's great when people feel comfortable enough to do so they can set that kind of an example. Let's talk about what you provide in the way of services. I know someone who grew up here who had a terrible heroin problem, and I know she went through quitting time and really gives the program a lot of credit for helping her turn her life around, and she's kept it turned around now for a number of years.
Good for her.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's good.
And that's got to
It's
be
always good
gratifying to hear.
So we don't
Yeah.
hear about those as often as we'd like to ourselves either.
Yeah, so let's talk about the services that Evergreen does provide for this community, because I think if you weren't here, you know, all the focus on problems notwithstanding, we'd be in a lot worse shape without the good work you folks do day in and day out.
Well, I appreciate those nice words.
Sincerely.
I mean, the first thing we do when someone calls up and seeks help is we make an appointment and do a good assessment, because we really don't know. We got to figure out what the problem is, how severe the problem is. Not all addicts are created equal, just like with anyone, and they have their own issues along with their addiction, whether that's homelessness or trouble with the law or maybe a medical issue, whatever the case might be. So we need to do a good assessment and figure out exactly what services are best for them. And it could be a combination of traditional substance abuse services and mental health, or getting them hooked in with a primary care physician, or doing some case management with them to hook them in with a homeless prevention center to help them get a place to live, even if temporarily, or whatever the case might be. So that's the first thing we do, is do a good assessment and figure out what they need. And then and sometimes people may need more than what we can do. Let's say someone was going to be, let's say it was an older person who'd been drinking a lot of alcohol for years and years. We might feel they need a medical detox. Because actually, even though all the publicity's been on opiates, detox off of alcohol is actually medically the more dangerous of the two. You can die from detox from alcohol. From heroin, you'll just feel like you did, but you won't. So if someone needs a medical detox, or we feel they need residential treatment before they come to us, we'll refer to that. Most of the people that come in the door we can treat. Now, you mentioned the word quitting time, and for people that doesn't know what that is, that's the name of our intensive outpatient program. That's our highest level of care. And we have a day track or an evening track, because the idea with outpatient care is we want to set up services that meet the needs of the individual, but also keeping in reality that they have a life, whether that's childcare or maybe they have employment or whatever the case might be. So we have a morning track for our intensive outpatient program, or an evening track, and that's 5 days a week in the morning. It's 8:30 to 11:30. The evening is 4 nights, and that's just because of the staffing schedule. It's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It's 5:30 to 8:30. And that's usually around 20 sessions, so it depends on how well the person does. If they progress well, they could leave a little earlier, or they have a relapse or a slip on day 18. We're not going to release them on day 20. We want to make sure they're stable and ready to step down their level of care. Just like with any disease, you need to look at it, what level of care does this person need? And in our intensive outpatient program, they're going to learn about the disease of addiction, what they need to do for recovery, how they need to change their life, help them integrate them into community supports, learn about relapse prevention strategies, because let's face it, people can stay protected pretty good at first in treatment, and they can keep their life kind of in a bubble, but eventually they got to learn to live in a world that has alcohol and drugs in it, and be able to, at times have exposure and still be able to be okay, because just because I quit, I can't expect the rest of the world to. So we help them learn those skills. Following that, they would either step down into a lower level of care, or if they didn't need that higher level of care, they could come straight in. And we do mostly groups for a variety of reasons. One, it helps us serve more people. And two, with addicts and alcoholics, group therapy is generally the most beneficial, though some people need individual to talk about some of their individual stuff. We have some of that, but we have mostly groups, and we have a lot of specialized groups. We have a men's group. Being a man in recovery is different than being a woman, so we have a women's group as well.
And I got to think, too, that when the abusing is reinforced by one's social circle, breaking away from that social circle, it's a lot easier to make new friends who are trying to reinforce each other in getting and staying clean. It's a lot easier to not go it quite so alone.
Early recovery is a paradox. We will tell people, okay, change all your friends, change the things that you do for fun, go to these meetings and help try to build a spiritual life, stop using drugs, be honest with people, but don't make any major changes in your life.
Huh? Yeah.
Exactly. So it is a paradox. And anyways, back to some of the groups we have. We have a variety of specialty groups, relapse prevention, and we have a co-occurring group for many people have a mental health issue as well as an addiction. And I think we have 11 groups in all. And one of our more successful ones is called the Bambi program.
That's the one for moms, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And, well, the acronym, I didn't make the acronym up, but it stands for Babies and Mothers Beginning in Sync. And we've had that program for about 3.5 years now, I believe. And what it is, it's for women that are pregnant and addicted to opiates. So they come to us, we do a full substance abuse evaluation, figure out what level of care they need. We verify their pregnancy, because sometimes people fib about whether they're pregnant or not to get certain medication, so we verify that. We engage them in treatment, and then if they want to be in the program, they can, and usually they're admitted to the hospital for induction on Subutex, which is it's a medication to help them with their cravings for opiates and to help stabilize them so that they're okay and they're not seeking drugs or going through intense cravings or going through withdrawal because they're pregnant, and that can be dangerous for the unborn child. And so we do a group model where we meet with the women every week with our doctor, Dr. Frankel from Rutland Regional Medical Center. It's a collaboration. And as long as, they've been going to all their treatment, their urine drug screens are good and what they're supposed to be, then they're making their OBGYN appointments and whatever else we're helping them work on. If everything's in order, then they get their prescription for the next week. And they continue coming to this group until they give birth, and then they actually continue for a while after. Though the medication then changes because they're not pregnant anymore. And in that program, we've had, I think we're up to 97 healthy babies born that weren't addicted to heroin or going through really bad detox or that sort of thing. And when you think of prevention, what better prevention is there than having a baby that's born stable?
We talk so much now about community impact. And what did you do? How well did you do it? Is anybody better off? 97 babies were born not addicted, who could have been born addicted. And the medical and spiritual and psychological impacts of all of that.
And financial.
And the financial impacts on society at large, all of that being averted through a program like this. Talk about community impact. Here's Exhibit A. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's, the other thing too that, Evergreen or Rutland Mental Health as a whole organization is involved a lot in a collaboration with the community, particularly through Project Vision. Because, some of the things that has made Rutland vulnerable to addiction isn't just about the medication. Some of it is lack of employment. A lot of neighborhoods that have kind of gone downhill and blighted buildings and that sort of thing.
A depressed environment.
Exactly.
Which encourages self-medication and a desire to escape one's troubles.
And the folks that come from the city to deal drugs, they flock to those type of areas. And as far as bringing the face of Rutland up, that's made a lot of progress. But I think what it's done more than anything is actually instill some hope in the community. Because I believe that people are starting to give up a little bit on Rutland. And I think now that's really turned around tremendously to where there's a lot of hope and that we are heading in the right direction. And Rutland's getting healthier and safer and better. And I think it's it's not any one agency or any one person. It's through the collaboration of the community, all working together, breaking down the silos, having people that work together that normally don't work together.
Right.
And a great testimony of that was last summer we had a recovery rally.
Yeah, I was there. That was a great afternoon.
It was a great afternoon. It was our first one. We're going to have another one this year too. And we had a collaboration with churches doing the food, and the National Guard had some blow-up stuff, and there was a lot of different vendors. We had music, we had the police. But the thing that really impressed me the most was I saw the police playing kickball with children of offenders that are, and those people you don't normally see interacting in that way.
Right. And what a wonderful message for those kids that the police are not the enemy.
And for the offenders.
And for the offenders to have a more friendly relationship.
Absolutely.
Now that they're in a better place in their lives. Yeah, yeah.
Because Chief Baker, several years ago when he came in and kind of got vision going and everything, one thing he said that I think was very important is we can't arrest our way out of this problem.
Right.
And I think he was right. And partnering with the police and with the social services in the community and particularly the people in the community themselves, that's really what it's taking to get Rutland moving in the right direction. And I think that's happening now. And that never would have happened, I think, if it hadn't been brought to light that we had a problem here.
Right. And again, like we've said, it's not that the problem is unique to this immediate area by any stretch of the imagination. And we've been fortunate in Vermont to not have, say, the epidemic of meth that they have out west. When we hear a story about a meth lab, it's few and far between in this part of the country, and then there are other states where it's just a complete blight.
Oh, a quick story. I was fortunate enough for 1 year of my career to work in New Zealand. And one of the things that they're in there is drinking rubbing alcohol. And if you drink a certain amount of it, you'll go blind. But they said, don't worry, you only go blind for 3 days. You'll be okay.
Oh my gosh.
And my point with that is addiction wherever you go.
Right.
And the thinking that goes with it, it doesn't make any sense.
Right, because who's going to say, I mean, I voluntarily will blind myself for 3 days for the kick.
Right, exactly.
And there are a lot of blind people, and they would, they have great lives because they've made good lives.
But they didn't do it on purpose.
They didn't do it on purpose.
No.
Yeah. Wow, that shows you, like you say, the
power of addiction. And one of the things that, if I was going to try to pick out one thing and say, this is what it takes for an addict to get better, and this is just through experience, in my own opinion, their ability to tolerate being uncomfortable. Because early recovery is very uncomfortable. Their emotions are going to be up and down. They're going to go through physical withdrawal of some sort. Their sleep is going to be all over the place. There'll be high anxiety. And their ability to tolerate being uncomfortable and getting through that. Because addicts don't do uncomfortable. You got a bad feeling, smoke something, shoot something, drink something, whatever the case might be.
Avoid the discomfort.
So they've become unaccustomed to having any discomfort. So experiencing discomfort for an addict early in recovery is even magnified more so because they're not accustomed to it.
Yeah. The expression, the only way out is through. That's like a mantra I have to remind myself. So I have a certain empathy for people in this situation. I mean, I sometimes joke, no one will ever arrest me for driving under the influence of a Twinkie, but the same kind of struggle, whether it's an illegal drug or even some of the things that are sanctioned, if you will.
They have legal problems. Their relationships and their family is all messed up. They're broke. A lot of them don't have a place to live. Lucky they have a pair of sneakers even. Mentally, they're a wreck. And because they've been poisoning their brain for however long. So they're in the worst possible condition you can be and still be alive. And yet they got to do one of the hardest things that there is for a person to do in the worst possible condition.
Something that requires great strength in their moments of greatest weakness. The paradox of it all. This time has flown, Clay, unbelievably.
Wow, it did.
I mean, I knew it would. I knew it would. If you would like to be part of the solution, supporting Evergreen Substance Abuse Services among our other partner agencies, 6 of the current United Way partners are devoted to substance abuse prevention and treatment, in fact. Certainly, you may text 41444 is the number, and the word Rutland, and you can make a donation to United Way of Rutland County to continue to support enterprises like Evergreen Substance Abuse Services. My guest today, Clay Gilbert, thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome.
It was a real pleasure. And thank you for joining us. Talk to you again next month.